Hey everyone, welcome back to the Overseers. My name's Proilios, and I'm once again going solo in this episode. And I think I will be solo for the next probably a dozen episodes. Um, without revealing too much, I just want to mention that Nightwing is currently moving to like a new phase in his life. He is not moving on from Overwatch, but he is kind of moving to a different place and he just needs some time to get settled over there, and then he can resume his work with the overseers. So we can just like consider him to be on sabbatical for now. And yeah, I'm just rooting for him, and I hope you guys can also show him some love in the comments. Leave a like to this video, and just show your appreciation for him because he's definitely a very integral part of this podcast. I think it's kind of a bit one-dimensional without him, dare I say. But yeah, I wish him the best of luck, and I can't wait for him to rejoin the podcast when he's all settled. Anyway, I think you guys must have also noticed that I'm using a different mic, and that's because my old headset kind of conked off, and I had to get a new one. And since I was on a bit of a tight budget this time round, I couldn't get the other one. Get a better one. Like the other one was kind of gifted to me a few years ago by some of my friends who like pitched in and got me a really good one. But this time I had to like buy one with my own money, and yeah, I had set a budget for it, so it's a bit of a weaker one. But I think it should do. Thanks to NVIDIA broadcast as well. But yeah, let's get into this episode, guys. We'll be reviewing the San Francisco Shock going into the season 4 playoffs. Now, we have seen the San Francisco Shock be a little bit shaky this season, which I'm sure is really odd for those that have followed them throughout seasons 2 and 3. It's definitely off, like, it's definitely weird to see the San Francisco Shock being a vulnerable team because for the past 2 seasons they were almost always dominating every single meta that they were playing in. But with a huge shake-up within the roster during the off season, they've had some new pieces, and it's taken a good bit of time to integrate them properly into the roster. But right now, I think they are looking quite strong and consistent. And going into the playoffs, I do think they deserve to be there. So let me just go over their different players, and then we can just try and analyze their chances going into the playoffs when they play against some of these other teams. Alright, so let's kick things off with the tank line, which is Super, Smurf, and Chohyobin. Now, I want to give a special shout out to Super because I think he has really proven how good of an in-game leader and shot caller he is this season. Because not only has he been fielded as their starting Reinhardt player as usual, I still think he's a really good Reinhardt. But he has also improved a ton on Orisa, and he's also fielded on her over Smurf a lot, which is quite unusual because Smurf was their go-to Orisa player. But right now, Super's got fair bit of opportunity to play on Orisa as well as some Winston and Wrecking Ball for the team. So that's been really good for him. And although Smurf isn't by any means a weak player, he has taken a little bit more of a situational seat, you can say. We did see him play the Winston during their play-in game against the Toronto Defiant, on which he looked really good. So Smurf still has it in him. And then they've also got Chohyobin, who is a really consistent off-rank. He's definitely not as godly as he used to be. I do think he can be better, but he's still playing consistently, and I think that's enough for the team at this point. So the tank line seems pretty sorted, and let's talk about the DPS players. So on DPS they've got Nero, Glister, and Ans. Now I think first up, Striker retiring, at least temporarily, was quite a big blow to the team because the Tracer play had been downgraded, I would say 2 or 3 tiers from Strikers down to Glisters. I have never been high on Glister, and I think seeing his performances, you guys can tell why. He's been a little bit underwhelming considering how much other analysts have kind of hyped him up. Um, and he's not really been the hit scan player or the tracer player that can win the Shock a championship once again. And they've also got Ants back. Now, Ants, we know him for his godly mechanics, right? And he certainly has those, like, he still has those. But the thing is, he's not being fielded as a starting hit scan all of the time. He's kind of their map based specialist. Like, for example, they brought him out on Soldier 76 on Volskaya while playing against the Toronto Defiant. And he looked good, right? But he's not like a starting hit scanner. I think that role is still with Glister, and I think that's why the hit scan role is lacking a little bit for the Shock. I think Nero is doing a relatively a better job on the flex DPS because I think right now with the Shock busting out those anti-dive comps a lot, Nero has really started playing a lot more Torbjorn, which he's surprisingly good at, I must say. He seems to be quite comfortable on the hero and is quite accurate with his rivet gun shots as well. And as someone who plays a lot of Torbjorn, I'm really happy to see someone that understands his full kit and utilizes it to a great extent in professional Overwatch. And we also know that Nero is super flexible, so he can play heroes like the Pharah, the Echo, the Mei. So he's got the Shock covered when it comes to being adaptable. Then moving on to the supports, they've got FD God, Violet, and Twilight. Now, just to get things out of the way with Twilight, I think he's just a pretty stable Ana player. He's been quite consistent this season, even though like he's not looked exceptional, but I think he's still really consistent, and he definitely fills that kind of uh, inability of Violets to play Ana to a really high level, which I still don't think anyone has an answer to the question of why Violet does not play Ana at this level, because I think pretty much every other flex support does. But considering that kind of weakness, Krusty has definitely like he made a smart move last season by acquiring Twilight for the team. So yeah, that's definitely helped the team fill some gaps. And now speaking of Violet, he has flexed to a lot of supports this season. Considering that the Shock have kind of turned FD God into a Lucio specialist rather than a main support. So Violet has been playing Brig and Mercy and even Lucio sometimes for the team. And he's even flexed to McCree. He did that in the beginning of the season. But I think undoubtedly his best looks have been on Batiste, on whom I think he strikes a really good balance between healing and damage. His main focus is always to keep his team up, which is why he builds his ults quite quickly. But he also spends his downtime pressuring enemy DPS very effectively, which I think is the perfect playstyle for a Batiste player. And it's really similar with his Moira as well, whom we saw him bust out during the June joust. And I think he was probably just the second best Moira after Fielder. And that's a really good sign when your flex support player can play like Bap, Moira, and we also know his Zenyatta is fantastic, like really well. So again, the flex support role seems to be pretty well sorted. And as for FD God, like I said, he has shrunk his role into being a Lucio specialist, and I think it's for the best because FD God is really good on Lucio, and he has adjusted his playstyle a lot for the team. He's trying to be more like how Moth used to be rather than going for solo plays all the time, which I think has been a double-edged sword because although yeah he has adjusted his playstyle to what the team needs and what the team's playstyle for the Lucio has always been, uh, he's not able to often do what he's best at doing, which is utilizing his mechanical capabilities on Lucio and trying to carry team fights. Like he did that really well on the Paris Eternal last year, and it worked really well for them. Maybe it's not the right thing for the Shock, but what I did notice during the match against the Defiant was that FD God did switch to that mechanical carry playstyle once his team was in a at a disadvantage. So I guess Krusty's probably told him like, if if you feel like we need to clutch out a fight and we are not in a we don't have good odds to win that fight, then you can try and leverage your mechanics to win it for us. So I do see some amount of freedom given to him based on what playstyle he should use. So that's really good. I hope they can fine tune that and really leverage that when they play those brawl compositions during their playoff games. All right, now we've discussed all the players on the team. So what do I think their chances are? I actually think that the Shock can make a really deep playoff run this time. I'm not just saying that because they have won two championships in the past, because they have looked quite shaky this season. But in this meta, there's a lot of power, especially with high mobility comps. And I think with Smurfs Winston especially, they can really play a huge variety of dive compositions, or even the dive brawl comp with Moira Lucio. I think the team would really excel at that, provided they get the DPS line a little bit better. Because I don't think the team has an amazing Sombra player at the moment, which is key in those dive brawl comps. But like obviously they have Smurfs Winston, but they've also started playing a lot of anti-dive comps, kind of like the Atlanta Rain, where they just either just focus on playing a good brawl mirror, or then they kind of swap out their Lucio for a Brig and simply play for point presence against dive comps. So they've just kind of figured out that they do not probably want to play those ball comps which are so popular these days, which I guess is fair, because the team doesn't have the best Tracer Sombra setup, which is played alongside those balls and uh, I guess duos, right? So it's a sensible move by the Shock. So even with those Winston and Reinhardt comps, they do have a lot of flexibility, and they do know how to play Orisa comps like those bunkers really well as well. So I think they're in a really good spot to make a deep playoff run. Unlike past metas, I think this meta is really flexible, because if you guys remember last year during the playoffs, we just saw this pick oriented meta where uh, they were like mainly sniper heroes were being played, right? You had Ash, Widow, and Hanzo, and then on tanks you had Hog with his crazy buff, being played alongside either Sigma or Wrecking Ball, or sometimes you would see Ball Sigma on maps like Busan Sanctuary, for instance. And then the supports were either Ana Mercy or Zen Mercy, based on which region. So NA was playing Zen and APAC was playing Ana anyway, but enough of the history lesson. So big comps in season 3, and then they had the double shield rush comp back in season two's playoffs. And then season 1 was that bunker comp kind of meta. So it's not just one composition that's dominant right now. You can play the ball-based poke comps. You can play the Winston-based either dive or the dive rush comps, and you can also play brawl or bunker. So it's really map dependent. Teams can pick the appropriate maps and play to their advantage. And I think that's what the Shock will excel at, considering how well Krusty is able to strategize. Do I think they can win the championship and get the three-peat? Probably not, because of the sheer amount of competition that's there this season. But I do think they can still go really deep. Like if they figure out all of those Tracer Sombra comps, they might just win the whole thing again. But unless they do that, I feel like they are just gonna fall short. They might reach like the losers finals and drop out there or something. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the San Francisco Shock. If you guys want to share any of your own, feel free to use the comment section. And do remember to like the video if you like my analysis, and subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell icon, so you'll be notified about my upcoming reviews. And yeah, that's all for this episode, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.